In a small laboratory in Paris, a woman worked alone in the darkness. The year was 1902. The room glowed with an eerie green light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Glass tubes and beakers filled with mysterious substances cast dancing shadows on the walls. Marie Curie didn't know she was slowly dying. Every day she handled radioactive materials with her bare hands. She kept test tubes of radium in her desk drawer, marveling at their beautiful glow. She even carried vials of radioactive elements in her pockets, delighting in their warm luminescence. She had no idea that the very discovery that would make her the most famous scientist in the world was also killing her, atom by atom, cell by cell. Marie Curie would become the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, the first person to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different sciences, the first female professor at the University of Paris. Her discoveries would revolutionize medicine, save millions of lives, and unlock the secrets of the atom itself. But the radium that made her famous would also destroy her body, her health, and ultimately her life. This is the story of a woman who sacrificed everything, including her own life, to push the boundaries of human knowledge. What would you risk to unlock the secrets of the universe if you knew that knowledge might kill you? Maria Sklodowska was born on November 7, 1867, in Warsaw, Poland. But Poland didn't exist on any map. It had been erased by Russia, Prussia, and Austria, divided among the 3 empires like a piece of meat. Maria's father, Władysław, was a mathematics and physics teacher who had lost his savings through bad investments. Her mother, Bronislawa, ran a prestigious boarding school for girls until tuberculosis began destroying her lungs. The Sklodowski family was part of the Polish intelligentsia, educated, patriotic, and desperately poor under Russian occupation. They spoke Polish in secret, read banned Polish books, and dreamed of a free Poland that existed only in their hearts. Maria was the youngest of 5 children, brilliant and curious from an early age. She could read by age 4. She devoured books on physics and mathematics. She built her own laboratory in her bedroom, conducting primitive experiments with whatever materials she could find. But in Russian-controlled Poland, opportunities for women were virtually non-existent. Universities didn't accept female students. Professional careers were closed to them. A brilliant girl like Maria was expected to become a governess or a teacher, nothing more. When Maria was 8, her eldest sister died of typhus. 2 years later, her mother succumbed to tuberculosis. The family was devastated emotionally and financially. Maria's father could barely afford to send his sons to university, let alone his daughters. But Maria and her sister Bronya made a pact. They would take turns supporting each other's education. Bronya would go to Paris first to study medicine. Maria would work as a governess to pay for her sister's expenses. Then, when Bronya became a doctor, she would support Maria's education. It was a desperate plan, but it was their only hope. For 6 years, Maria worked as a governess for wealthy families in the Polish countryside. She sent almost every kopeck she earned to Paris, living on bread and tea, wearing the same dress until it fell apart. But she never stopped learning. She read scientific journals by candlelight. She conducted experiments in secret. She taught herself advanced mathematics and physics. In 1891, at age 24, Maria finally had enough money to join her sister in Paris. She enrolled at the University of Paris, the Sorbonne, as one of only 23 women among nearly 2,000 students. She changed her name to the French Marie and threw herself into her studies with an intensity that amazed her professors. She lived in a 6th-floor garret so cold that water froze in her wash basin. She survived on bread, butter, and tea, occasionally fainting from hunger during lectures. But Marie was free. Free to learn, free to discover, free to become the scientist she had always dreamed of being. In 1893, she graduated first in her physics degree. The following year, she earned a mathematics degree, finishing second in her class. Marie was brilliant, but she was also alone in a foreign country, struggling to make ends meet. She needed a laboratory to continue her research, but labs were expensive and women were rarely welcome. Then, in 1894, a Polish physicist friend introduced her to Pierre Curie. Pierre was 8 years older than Marie, a respected scientist who had already made important discoveries in crystallography and magnetism. He was also a bachelor who had devoted his life entirely to science, convinced that marriage would only distract him from his research. One conversation with Marie changed his mind forever. They talked about science, about research, about the mysteries of the physical world. Pierre had never met a woman who shared his passion for discovery, who understood the beauty of scientific truth. It would be a beautiful thing, a thing I dare not hope, if we could spend our life near each other, hypnotized by our dreams, your patriotic dream, our humanitarian dream, and our scientific dream, Pierre wrote to Marie. They married on July 26, 1895, in a simple ceremony. Marie wore a dark blue dress, practical enough to serve later as a laboratory outfit. Their honeymoon was a bicycle tour through the French countryside, discussing physics and chemistry as they pedaled through villages and forests. It was the beginning of one of the greatest scientific partnerships in history. Marie needed a topic for her doctoral thesis. Pierre suggested she investigate the mysterious rays emitted by uranium, recently discovered by Henri Becquerel. Using an electrometer invented by Pierre and his brother, Marie began measuring the intensity of uranium radiation. She made a startling discovery. The strength of the radiation depended only on the quantity of uranium present, not on its chemical form. This meant that radiation was an atomic property, something fundamental to the element itself. Marie coined the term radioactivity to describe this phenomenon. She had identified a new property of matter, but Marie's most important discovery was yet to come. Testing various elements and compounds, she found that thorium was also radioactive. More intriguingly, she discovered that pitchblende, a uranium ore, was far more radioactive than pure uranium. This could only mean one thing. Pitchblende contained unknown radioactive elements. Marie was determined to find them. Working in a converted shed that had once been a dissecting room for the School of Medicine, Marie and Pierre began the backbreaking work of isolating the mysterious elements. They processed tons of pitchblende, stirring huge vats of boiling ore with iron rods nearly as tall as themselves. The work was exhausting, dangerous, and seemingly endless. Marie would later write, "Sometimes I had to spend a whole day mixing a boiling mass with a heavy iron rod nearly as large as myself. I would be broken with fatigue at the day's end." But slowly, painstakingly, they began to isolate tiny amounts of intensely radioactive material. In July 1898, they announced the discovery of a new element, which Marie named polonium, after her beloved homeland. 5 months later, they discovered another element, even more radioactive than polonium. They called it radium. The scientific community was skeptical. The Curies had discovered the chemical properties of these new elements, but they hadn't isolated them in pure form. Without pure samples, many scientists refused to accept that polonium and radium were truly new elements. Marie was determined to prove them wrong. For 4 more years, she continued the grueling work of purification. Finally, in 1902, she succeeded in isolating 1/10 of a gram of pure radium chloride. It was enough to determine radium's atomic weight and prove its existence beyond doubt. The discovery made Marie and Pierre international celebrities. In 1903, they were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics, along with Henri Becquerel, for their work on radioactivity. Marie was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. But fame came with a price. Journalists invaded their privacy. Curiosity seekers demanded tours of their laboratory. Society hostesses competed to have the famous Curies at their dinner parties. Marie and Pierre hated the attention. They were scientists, not celebrities. They wanted to work, not perform. The constant interruptions made research nearly impossible. Pierre's health was deteriorating. Whether from radiation exposure or stress, no one knew. He suffered from severe pain in his legs and back. His hands were so damaged by radiation that he could barely dress himself. Marie was also showing signs of radiation sickness. She was constantly tired. Her hands were cracked and scarred, and she suffered from anemia. But they didn't understand the connection between their symptoms and their work. Radioactivity was so new that no one realized how dangerous it was. On April 19, 1906, tragedy struck. Pierre, weakened by illness and distracted by pain, stepped into a busy Paris street without looking. A horse-drawn wagon crushed his skull, killing him instantly. Marie was devastated. She had lost not only her husband, but her closest collaborator, her intellectual equal, her best friend. Pierre is sleeping his last sleep beneath the earth. It is the end of everything, 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 she wrote in her diary. But Marie refused to give up their work. The University of Paris offered her Pierre's professorship, making her the first female professor in the university's 650-year history. She accepted, determined to continue their research. Working alone now, Marie achieved what many thought impossible. She isolated pure metallic radium. In 1911, she was awarded a second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry, for the discovery of radium and polonium. She was the first person to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different sciences, a feat that has been matched by only one other person in history. But Marie's greatest contribution wasn't her discoveries. It was how she used them to save lives. During World War I, Marie realized that X-ray equipment could help battlefield surgeons locate bullets and shrapnel in wounded soldiers. She developed mobile X-ray units, nicknamed Petites Curies, and drove them to the front lines herself. Marie personally trained women to operate the equipment and established France's first military radiology service. Her X-ray units examined over 1 million wounded soldiers, saving countless lives. After the war, Marie became a global advocate for science and international cooperation. She traveled the world, raising money for research and promoting the peaceful uses of radioactivity. Radium was being used to treat cancer. Radioactive isotopes were revolutionizing medicine. Marie's discoveries were saving millions of lives around the world. But the very elements that made her famous were slowly killing her. Marie had spent decades handling radioactive materials with no protection. She kept radium samples in her desk drawer. She carried test tubes of radioactive elements in her pockets. Her laboratory notebooks were so contaminated that they remain radioactive to this day. The radiation was destroying her bone marrow, the tissue that produces blood cells. She developed aplastic anemia, a condition where the body stops making enough new blood cells. In 1934, Marie's health began to fail rapidly. She was constantly exhausted, prone to infections, and suffering from kidney problems. On July 4, 1934, Marie Curie died at a sanatorium in the French Alps. She was 66 years old. The cause of death was aplastic anemia, almost certainly caused by radiation exposure. The woman who had unlocked the secrets of the atom had been killed by her own discoveries. But Marie's death was not in vain. Her sacrifice advanced human knowledge immeasurably. Her research laid the foundation for nuclear physics, nuclear chemistry, and nuclear medicine. Her discoveries led to cancer treatments that have saved millions of lives. Her work made possible everything from nuclear power to space exploration. Marie Curie showed the world that science knows no gender. She proved that brilliance and determination could overcome any obstacle, even the prejudices of an entire society. She also showed us the true cost of discovery. Science is not a safe profession. Every breakthrough requires someone willing to venture into the unknown, to risk everything for knowledge. Marie knew the dangers. In her later years, she understood that radiation was harmful, but she continued her work anyway, because she believed that the benefits to humanity outweighed the risks to herself. Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood, Marie once said. Now is the time to understand more, so that we may fear less. Marie Curie lived by those words. She spent her life transforming fear into understanding, mystery into knowledge, the unknown into the known. She won 2 Nobel Prizes and saved millions of lives, but her discovery killed her, and in dying for science, she became immortal. Today, the element curium is named in her honor. The unit of radioactivity is called the Curie. Hospitals around the world use her discoveries to treat cancer patients. Marie Curie's laboratory notebooks are still radioactive and will remain so for another 1,500 years. They are stored in lead-lined boxes at the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, a permanent reminder of the woman who gave her life to unlock the secrets of the atom. She was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, the first person to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different sciences, and the first female professor at the University of Paris. But her greatest achievement was showing us that the pursuit of knowledge is worth any sacrifice, even life itself. Marie Curie, the woman who glowed in the dark, literally and figuratively, and whose light continues to illuminate the path of scientific discovery more than a century after her death. She won 2 Nobel Prizes and saved millions of lives, but her discovery killed her. And in that sacrifice, she achieved something greater than any prize. She achieved immortality.